of you are here today to hear more about it. So I'm going to go through the following points with you. First, I want to briefly talk about why land economy is an interesting subject to study. Then I want to talk briefly about land economy at Cambridge, and I've put this in parentheses for a reason, and I'll tell you why in a second, if you don't already know it. Then I'll go briefly over a few points about how to study land economy at Homerton. If you have any questions on, and I'm sure you will have many questions on that part, we are going to have 2 students as well who will join the Q&A session. So if you're interested in questions that I'm very unlikely to be able to answer, such as, how do you, like what type of rooms are available at college, or what type of clubs can you join, then my students will be able to answer these questions. Then we'll talk about applying for land economy at Homerton, and I'll give you a brief subject taster session. Good. So why land economy? So I'm pretty sure all of you know what land economy is, but I would like to know from you why you want to study land economy. So feel free to use the chat function, please. Don't use the Q&A because that will reserve for actual questions. But drop in the chat, please, why you find land economy interesting and what it is that you hope to study. I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. Can you actually use the chat function? For someone do you know?
I think they might be able to. You can use the Q&A function if you can't use.
Okay, then use the Q&A function. Use any function that you can use.
Yes.
In the meantime, I'll talk about land economy. So I'm pretty sure you've seen the land economy website. You have a broad idea of what land economy is. So land economy combines 3 subject areas. That is environment, law, and economics. But it's neither only environment, it's or law or economics. So it's really a combination of all 3 subjects. And that's exactly what I can see in the chat or in the Q&A function. So it seems like you can't use the chat function, which is fine. Just use the Q&A. So this subject gives you expertise in all 3 areas, and that's a very, very strong combination of skills to have. We apply this specifically to the built and natural environment. So we talk about environmental policies, but also the built environment. So how do cities evolve? Why do people move into cities from the countryside? What economic policies change cities, and also how do environmental policies change things in the world, right? So it's a very, very applied and varied subject, and it has a high policy relevance, and it's a very engaged subject in a way that you will probably be able to answer a lot of questions with land economy with all the skills that we teach you. So it's also a very global subject because it's not very specific to a certain country. I mean, we teach you law. Law is somewhat specific to the UK law that we teach, but the methods, legal methods, you can apply in different contexts. And of course, economics and environmental aspects are very transferable to other countries as well. I can see in the chat or in the Q&A that someone says they're very interested in the wide variety of career prospects, and that is absolutely true. I don't have the slide with me, but our graduates go into dozens of different jobs, really dozens of different jobs, different areas, policy making, consulting, academia, city planning. You can do a law conversion as well. So we have a ton of options for you. I think land economy is also a subject for people that don't really want to specify yet what they want to do. It's a very broad area, a very broad degree. And you can specialize between year 2 and 3, and then you can make up, then you can decide where you want to go with this. And also it gives you tons of options for further study as well. For some reason, my slides aren't moving. No, they are. Good. So, I mean, a lot of what you can see on this slide is what I've already said, right? So land economy is a combination of different things, mainly three pillars, but different sub-disciplines belong to these three pillars. For example, public policy. Well, public policy could be, that is a mixture of all three things, right? If you're familiar with the law, you're able to write new legislation, and that influences public policy. But public policy, of course, has a goal, right? It's something that you want to achieve. It could be an economic goal that you want to pursue. You want to make sure that incomes rise, right? So public policy might be designed in such a way that you can help people financially, and environmentally, and in different ways. So public policy is something that you could do with land economy. Economics, of course, microeconomics, macroeconomics, but also regional economics. The North-South divide is an example. You can learn different statistical programs and other software. For example, you will learn statistics, and depending on what subjects you choose in year 2 and 3, you might be able to learn geographic information systems if you're more interested in the geography part of land economy, which is absolutely fine. It's more, human geography that we do. But also finance and investment, which belongs to economics, is something that you could study in year 2 and 3. And then, we talk about global movements of people, land use policy, real estate cycles, housing supply, housing affordability. These are all topics that are relevant in land economy. Why land economy? So we have the only land economy degree in the UK. So there is no other university in the UK where you can study land economy. There is one other university, which is in Ghana, which also has a department of land economy and an undergrad in land economy. But in the UK, this is the only university where you will find this degree. There are different other degrees, that combine economics and geography or real estate and planning, but they're all missing one of the three aspects that we teach, right? They might not have the law aspect, they might not have the environmental aspect, but if this is what you want to study, then this is the degree for you. Our research has been rated world leading. So every few years we get a very thorough assessment of our research at the department. So we are world leading, which means that what we teach you is world leading as well, because our slides, our teaching, our seminars, they relate to our research, of course. We have a lot of policy impact. We change laws, not me personally, I'm not a lawyer, but we have lawyers at the department that help changing laws and policy and regulations. We deal a lot with industry people, so we influence their strategies. We have seminars with them. We do research for them so that they can make better business decisions. And there's a lot of stakeholder engagement with other people as well. We are very international. I'm sure you know that. We have research collaborations with many global research institutes, and engagement with international bodies. Then also, land economy has a very unique approach. It's very interdisciplinary. You've seen that now. You get a solid foundation in economics, and economics is maths and statistics, but also urban and regional and financial and environmental economics. You can specialize in year 2 and 3, but you all have to do maths and stats and certain economics foundation papers in year 1. You get a thorough training in law as well. There's public law, private law, real property law, landlord and tenant law, etc. Some of these are very specific types of law, but of course, land economy is somewhat specific. And then we do this because we're all concerned with the natural and the built environment. So we study how people interact or make use of the natural and built environment, and we study this with the methods that we teach, so the economics methods and the law methods. And then in year 3, this is where you can shine. This is where you can do your own research, because you all have to write a final year dissertation. Students really enjoy that a lot because this is where they can, this is a subject that they might have been interested in for 1 or 2 years already. And then it's their time to collect the data, to ask a good research question, and try to find the right methods to answer this question. So this is an individual piece of research. No one else will write the same dissertation as you, right? You will have a supervisor who will guide you. And until year 3, until you start doing that, you'll have the foundations for that. We make sure in year 1 and 2. And also, the course carries part exemption from the requirements of the Law Society and Bar Council, so you can do a law conversion by application, of course, right? And the course is also RICS accredited, which means that it satisfies certain global surveying standards. So if you want to become a real estate surveyor, then land economy is also the subject for you. Good. I'll talk briefly about the course structure. So if you attended the open days of the Department of Land Economy 2 weeks ago, you've already seen me and you've already seen that slide, but I'll show it anyway. So in year 1 is called Part 1A. There are 4 papers. You can see 5 bullet points, but paper 1A and paper 1B count as one paper. It's just 2 different sections. One is microeconomics and the other is macroeconomics. So that's paper 1A and 1B. Then we have paper 2, the public sector. That's kind of law paper. It talks about the constitution and devolution and public things that are relevant to know. And then we have a method paper. So that's quantitative methods and legal methods, which is where you learn statistics and mathematics and legal methods. You might have many questions on the quantitative part because you might not have noticed that you will have to do quant methods as well, but don't worry too much. When you make it into Cambridge, you make it through paper 3. Don't worry. Then we have paper 4, which is a paper that is kind of a survey of typical land economy subjects. So paper 4 talks about how cities develop, policy, how it's done, how it affects people, environmental things, etc. So that's a paper that really shows you the breadth of land economy. So you have to take all of these papers. That's 4 papers in total. In year 2, you get to choose. So there are a couple of papers that you can choose, and you have to take 5 of them. So that's year 2. Year 2 is called part 1B. So you choose 5 papers. 1 of them has to be a law paper. So you have to take at least paper 8 or paper 9. You can take both if you like. So you can see there is a variety of, it opens up, right? You have a lot of choice. There's environmental economics, there is finance, there is regional economics and policy, there are 2 law papers. You can learn about how cities develop and how cities change over time, and also the differentiation between land and urban economics. And in the final year, on top of your dissertation, you choose 4 papers, but one of them can be from second year. So in the 3rd year, you can choose one of the papers from the 2nd year, which you haven't already chosen, of course. So some people take paper 6 in 3rd year, for example, right? And then they pick 3 other papers from 3rd year. And you can see it gets more and more specialized. So there is now law and economics, and then landlord and tenant law. There's planning as well, real estate finance. So by the way, real estate finance, if you see in the handbook, the title of real estate finance is actually a different one. It's much longer, but I couldn't fit it on the slide. But essentially, paper 15 is a real estate finance paper. So if you want to do real estate finance in year 3, you will have to do paper 6, which is finance, in year 2. But there are no other sequences that you have to take. So if you want to do real estate finance, then you have to do paper 6 in year 2. And then we have more development economics focused papers. There's land, food, and ecosystem services. That's paper 16. And we have land policy and development economics in paper 17. And this is how land economy, that's the module handbook at the moment. Sometimes we make changes to the handbook because we want to stay up to date, right? So sometimes we just, and it doesn't happen very often. So very often we make changes within the papers rather than swapping out entire papers, right? But this is broadly what you will be able to study. But it's it's not guaranteed that we'll always that in 3 years' time you will have exactly those papers, but it's very likely. Okay, so this is what you could study. And when I go back to the Q&A and have a look at what you want to study, I'm pretty sure that you will all find something that you find interesting. You can go into very different directions. So no two of you will do the same thing probably. You can go into development economics, you can go into medicine. Really, I've had a student who then went on to study medicine and trying to address health inequalities. And health inequalities are something that can be very spatial as well. And he had all this knowledge from land economy. I've had other students going into modern South Asian studies or into development economics, or classic case is real estate finance. We have an MPhil at the department as well in that subject. Good. This is a typical land economy week in first year. And the first thing that you might notice is that the week doesn't start on Monday. And that is not a fault on my slide. The teaching week actually starts on a Thursday in Cambridge. Don't ask. Someone decided that 800 years ago, probably, and they haven't changed it. So the teaching week starts on a Thursday and ends on a Wednesday, and you'll get used to that at some point. So this is the timetable of the first years that I had this year. You can see there are the 4 papers that everyone has to take, paper 1, 2, 3, and 4, but these are only the lectures. So on top of the lectures, there are 2 more things that we ask you to do, and one is supervisions. And supervisions are small group teaching. So this is typically in groups of 4 students with a supervisor. So typically for every paper, you have 3 to 4 supervisions per term. So if you have 4 papers, that means you'll have between 12 and 16 supervisions across the 8 weeks of term. And it's roughly every 2 weeks, we could say, right? But it is, it's up to the lecturer and the supervisor what the rhythm of the supervisions is, but it's typically every fortnight. There's 1 supervision in a given paper. The way land economy supervisions are run differs from other subjects. So if you've attended other focus sessions for other subjects, you will have heard that supervisions are organized by the college. But in land economy, that's different. So in land economy, so let's talk about what the other model would be. If the supervisions were organized by the college, that would mean that I, as a director of studies, offer you supervisions for your 4 papers, and you will attend those supervisions together. So if you would sit in a supervision with only Homerton land economy students, right? Because you would all sign up for the same supervision slots. Now, in land economy, we do this differently. These are organized at the department level. And I think that is actually nicer. It's a bit better because that means that you will be in those supervisions with students from other colleges if you sign up with students from other colleges, right? So if there are 70 undergrad students in first year, then there might be 20 different slots available for a given supervision, and you just sign up for one, right? So there are 4 places per supervision. You sign up, and then you attend the supervision, and there might be 3 different people from 3 other colleges, and that's quite nice, I think. It gives you more room to interact with other people. The way supervisions work is that the supervisors will release questions. So if you just covered a certain statistical method in statistics, then you will receive supervision questions, a week or 2 in advance, and then you will work on them. You'll try to answer them, and then you're invited to submit your answers to the supervisor before the supervision, right? And they will have a look at your answers and mark them and give you feedback. And then you attend the supervision. And this is where you then can compare approaches. So the supervision is really where it's like a Cambridge interview, really, right? I mean, you haven't had yours yet, but it's a 60-minute slot where you can just discuss different approaches and different solutions with a supervisor, but primarily with other students. And supervisions are 60 minutes long. And you have that, like I said, typically you have 3 or 4 per paper per term, which means that, you'll have supervisions on Thursday and Friday as well, perhaps, Wednesday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon. So what I want to say is that these 4 lectures that you see on your timetable are not the only teaching that you'll have. You'll sign up for your supervisions and then you'll hopefully attend them. And also we require you to do independent study and reading, of course. It's a very intense subject, and there's a lot that you can read because it's such a broad topic, right? If you are only interested in maths, then I think reading the newspapers would give you some idea of, how could you apply maths to solve certain questions, problems in the world, right? Problems that you can read in the newspapers. But I think for land economy, there are so many things that you can read, and we don't only ask you to read textbooks, but also to keep informed about things happening in the world. So read the newspapers, right? Read journals, watch the news, etc. And try to find out which problems that you see and that you read about in the newspapers you can actually solve with the methods that you learned in land economy. Good. Entry requirements. So it is a very competitive subject. I want to say that up front. So it depends, it varies a bit year by year. Typically, the department receives around, that's why, not the department, sorry. The college receives between 7 and 11 applications per place. So it is very competitive, but of course it varies by year, right? So it could be the lower end, could be the higher end. We typically have 5 to 7 students per year. But it could be more, could be less per year. So the minimum entry offer is for A levels, A star, AA. Although I have to say, many people that we accept and that turn up to study land economy have higher marks at the end. And this is because I think there's such an incentive. When you get an acceptance from Cambridge, of course you study hard, right? Which is why many students then exceed their requirements, not because they have to, but I think there's just a very strong incentive to do very well to make the offer. So, but what you need is really only an A star AA, not 2 A star, not 3 A star, right? And we have an equivalent on the IB scale as well. Something that is important to note is that we have no specific subjects requirements. So you don't have to have a certain combination of subjects in your A levels, unlike other subjects, right? So you don't have to have maths, you don't have to have economics, but of course it's useful because it's one of the 3 pillars of land economy. So, but there are other things that are very relevant besides maths and econ. If you don't have maths or econ, that's fine. History is relevant for land economy. Politics is relevant. Geography is relevant. Sociology, psychology, almost anything is really relevant. And I think you just have to understand how what you studied in school, how that contributes to land economy, right? What can you do with what you studied, and how can you build on that to do well in land economy? So it says on the slide, maths and economics are useful, but you don't have to have it really. Good. Studying land economy at Homerton. I've already said that supervisions are not organized by the college, right? So that's one thing about studying at Homerton. So none of the colleges does it that way. So everyone, every college has supervisions organized by the department, not by the college. So you will sit in the supervisions with other students, which is nice. So Homerton is the largest college of Cambridge in terms of student numbers. Like I said, we have between 5 and 7 every year. And I think that's a good thing because there's always someone else that you can talk to in land economy. But that's really a preference, right? So I'm not saying that this is what makes Homerton great. It is great for people who value that, right? So that's one preference. If you want to study in a college that is closer to the city, that's also a preference, right? So you have to find out for yourselves what is it that you value about a college, and then decide whether Homerton is the right college for you. But it is nice to have more than one other student per year in your degree. Now it's really nice to get a sense of community. You can form study groups, and also the higher years will probably be able to give you some insights into, what subjects to study, how to study them, and help out with any, clarification. So that's the nice thing about having a larger group of students at your college. So I, as the director of studies, will have regular meetings with the students. It's typically at least two per term. So there's one at the start of term and one at the end of term. And then if there's anything else that you would like to discuss, then we can always schedule additional meetings. So typically we discuss, study progress, at the end of the term, for example. At the start of term, we discuss what papers to pick and, how to plan the study load, etc. We discuss further study if you want to do an MPhil, for example, or if you want to do an internship or go into a job. We can discuss all that, and we'll talk about before the start of year 3. We'll talk about possible dissertation topics and which supervisors to approach. We also try to have some entertainment at the college. So we do subject dinners, for example, where we'll have a nice formal dinner. Sometimes, this together with other subjects, could be with, for example, economics, because, there are topics that we can all discuss in economics, right? If you do land economy and with the econ students, that's really nice. We also mingle with the architects. We try to do other academic and non-academic events, for example, excursions. We invite speakers. And last year we teamed up with the architect students and had a sketch planation workshop. So where we tried to explain a problem in land economy, something that you find interesting in a sketch. And I think, that's not something that you need for an exam, but it really helps to condense ideas and try to depict them in a simple graph. So we try to do these things as well. So there's some entertainment as well. Okay, so what are we looking for in applicants? We want academic ability, but even more important, academic potential. So not everyone is able to always fulfill their potential in school, right? So we also look at contextual factors to see how you did in the circumstances that you were in. But I'll talk about this in a few minutes. What we really want to see is a genuine subject interest. So you need to be able to tell us why you find land economy interesting and why you want to study land economy and not anything else, right? So we will read your personal statement, and yes, we know that you don't only apply for land economy. So your personal statement might not be written exclusively for land economy. In fact, it might be written for a different subject, right? So if you apply primarily for, let's say, economic subjects plus land economy, then you will probably have a personal statement that's more tailored to economics. That is fine, right? So we know that this is happening, and that's we won't hold this against you at all. But we want to see that you are interested in land economy, and that's not only by looking at the personal statement. We'll see your academic record. We'll see your extracurricular things that you've done. So all of this together will show us hopefully your motivation and enthusiasm. And of course, there needs to be a good fit, right? So if you actually want to study economics, but you apply to land economy, then you might not be happy in land economy. So there needs to be a good fit, and this is why we interview you. I'll have another slide on that. So overall, we really want to see evidence, and evidence might be different things. It might be a personal statement. It might be your academic record, might be your reference from your school, evidence that you are a dynamic and critical thinker, right? And that you are able to solve problems. Because after all, land economy is really a subject that helps you to solve big problems in the world, right? Different problems, depending on what you specialize in. But we want to see evidence of that. Also, you should be comfortable with new ideas, right? So in the interview, especially, we will challenge you. We'll say, but what if, right? What if we assume this? What if we assume that? So you need to be somewhat comfortable with implementing these ideas into your thinking and arrive at a potentially different conclusion, right? So the conclusions that you draw should be based on evidence. So yeah, these are really the things that we are looking for in applicants. And you can show this not only in the written application, but also in the interview. Good. Why do we interview? This is perhaps a question that you've never asked yourself, but why do we do that? You could just apply and we accept you. But it is a very competitive subject. We need to run interviews to find out who the best candidates are. And as I said, there are different pieces to all of this. It's not only the marks, right? It's also different things. So we want to give you the opportunity to show who you are and to shine, right? So what is it that makes you the ideal candidate for land economy at Homerton, or for land economy? It gives you the option on the opportunity to showcase your problem-solving skills. That's really what the interview is for, right? We'll challenge you, we'll ask you questions, we'll give you potentially a lot of information. You'll have to find out which parts of all these things that you just told me are relevant to answer the question, right? So this is all part of problem-solving skills. And of course, it gives you the option to see whether land economy is really the right thing for you. Good. So for the interviews, interview is a word that is very daunting, I think. So think of it rather as an academic conversation. It's not only a one-sided thing, right? So we want to get to know you, but you want to get to know us as well. So it's really a conversation, an academic one, about a potentially unfamiliar topic. And it's not about getting the answers right from the start. So what we really want to see is how you arrive at a conclusion. And then we throw in different other things, right? So we change the assumptions. So, but what if, right? And then we just want to see how you deal with that new information, how you implement them into your answers. Maybe they change your conclusion, maybe they don't. So you can then change your answer, or you defend the answer that you had previously. But this is really what we want to see, because the interview is really like a supervision. So you need to be able to defend your approach, but also to adjust your answers if the facts change. So it's really a holistic and system-based thinking that we require from our students, because land economy is such a broad subject. For example, how can we solve the housing crisis? If this was an economics interview, then the answer might be, well, so first of all, what is the housing crisis? Let's assume the housing crisis means there is a limited supply of housing, but very high demand, right? And that means that prices get pushed up and up and up. So how can we solve this problem? The economist might say, well, if there is limited supply, but increasing demand, that means we just need more supply, right? We need to build more housing. And if we do that, then prices will gradually fall again and more people will be able to find a house. So that's when we put the economist hat on, right? The land economist would say something similar, but on top of that, they would say, okay, but how is the environment affected by new construction? What are the legal challenges that we have to overcome before we can build, right? Do we need planning? I mean, we need planning, consent, etc. We need to discuss with different stakeholders. Maybe we need to find out what type of housing is needed. So these are really the types of questions that the land economist would ask, right? On top of what the economist would ask. And then, interviews are really challenging, but they are fun. So I like interviewing students, and I think many students really enjoy the experience as well. Good. So what information do we use to assess applicants? It's your academic record, of course, your personal statement, as I said, your reference, and we will also now from this year on require written work. So this will all be, I guess, on the website. So this will be a piece of written work which you typically completed during school. So like I said, we use contextual data as well. So different people do differently depending on what their context was, right? So people might have access to different resources. What opportunities did you have, right? That allowed you to do certain things. Did your school offer specific subjects? Were they able to offer a field trip, etc.? And some students might not have had that, and that's fine. But what I want to say is really we assess all of this together. We don't just look at one piece of information. All right, so it's now time for the taster session. And I want to talk about property markets. So the interesting thing about housing, I think, is that everyone has an opinion on it. So I'm a housing economist, and no matter who I talk to, everyone knows something about housing, right? Either it's too expensive, or it's so difficult to buy a new house, or it's so difficult to get a mortgage, but everyone has something to say on housing, and I find that very interesting. And I would like to ask you one thing before we start with the lecture. And what I want to know from you is, who cares about property markets and why? Who are the stakeholders involved in property markets? I'll give you a minute to think about this. The chat is disabled. Yeah, use the Q&A function instead. Who could be different groups of people that have an interest in how housing markets do, whether they do well? Apart, of course, from people who want to buy housing. Developers and tenants, exactly. Developers want to build housing because that's how they make money, right? So there's an economic motive, but you can't just go and build anywhere, right? So you need to obey planning laws, etc. You need to buy land, which is expensive. So there are also investors, students, and low-income families that are interested in that, right? Housing agencies, city planners, housing associations, and governments. Oh, governments is an interesting one, right? Why are governments interested in housing? Because it's a very strong indicator of how the economy is doing, right? If the economy is doing well, people spend money, then people have to pay taxes, right? Also, when you buy property, you have to pay stamp duty. So governments do have an interest from a tax perspective. It's also a very, very big industry, right? So we need many people, builders, decorators, plumbers, joiners, etc. So it's really a very, very big industry compared to other industries. All right, so there are other things that I'm listing here on the slides that you might not have thought about. So one thing is poor housing leads to poor health, right? So if you live in damp housing, then you might get respiratory problems, etc. So there's this very strong correlation between the quality of housing and your health. So there has been studies on that as well. This one that you can see here is from a website that's called The Conversation. That's a very interesting website that summarizes academic research for lay audiences. So if you're interested in reading more research, The Conversation is really a nice website. But there's also a lot of academic research showing that housing is not only correlated with health, but also plays a causal role for health. So there's this one study that was published in 2020 What you can see here is this is the year, relatively speaking, to buying a house. So if you buy a house, then we assume this is in this year. And what you can see that after buying a house, the number of health problems, this dashed line, goes down significantly. So health improves when people become homeowners. And the other way around, self-assessed health and another indicator of health go up. So of course, the question is that because of property rights, so that you acquire property rights, or is it because when you live in your own home, you can improve the home and make it healthier? But yeah, there's a lot of research on the relationship between housing and health, and you might not have thought about this before. So this is why I wanted to show you this. Another thing is inheritance tax, right? So of course, the government makes tax money from inheritances, and housing might be one of them. And there has been a discussion about, to change inheritance laws, etc. In other countries, you can pass on real estate without having to pay taxes. In other countries, you pay a lot of taxes on inherited houses. But yeah, if we scrapped inheritance tax, that would be very costly. So another thing that you might not have thought about, right? So that's intergenerational wealth transfer. And finally, retirement planning, right? So if you buy a house when you're young, you might have paid off the mortgage when you go into retirement. And that means you have a place to live where you don't have to pay rent anymore, right? You also don't have to pay the mortgage anymore when you paid it off. So it's a good it's a good vehicle to save up for retirement so that you do not have to pay rent anymore. So it's a really important thing in your life. There are also other financial products that are related to housing. Another thing that you might not have seen, these are equity release products. So if you are a homeowner, and typically these are products for people in retirement already, which people who have a house that is free from debt, so where the mortgage has been paid off, they can take out a reverse mortgage or an equity release product, and that means that the bank will pay these people a regular income, a monthly income, for example, and when the homeowner dies, then the bank will get the house. So, but that's another way of making an income from this fixed asset. Another thing that you might not have known. Okay, and then in the final few minutes, I think I have about 10. Is that true? Good. I want to talk about determinants of house prices and rents. And it is very likely that in the next few minutes, I will only use the word house prices instead of house prices and rents. But what I'm going to teach you applies to both house prices and rents. But for simplicity, I'll probably just say house prices. So I'll show you a few slides and then I will switch to my tablet because I'm going to write on the slides as well. That's something that I also always do during my teaching. So if you study land economy, you will see me write a lot by hand on my slides. Good. So what are the determinants of house prices? There are different geographical levels, let's say, at which house prices are determined, amongst other things, right? But for example, within a country. So this is a heat map of house prices in the UK. It's about, I think, this screenshot was from 2024, so it might look slightly different now, but I think overall this will still kind of look the same. I just want you to look at it for half a minute and see whether what you see makes sense to you. So the red means higher house prices, and the cooler colors, the green and especially the blue, mean lower house prices. And if you have any observations, pop them in the Q&A. There are little pockets of red. and there is a very big pocket of red. And probably you understand what's going on here, right? You can see that the London area, or especially the south of England, is rather expensive compared to other parts of the country. So that reflects the north-south divide, right? People have higher incomes in London, they can afford higher prices, but also London is just a city of opportunities. Like every city, London is not the only pocket where you can see red, right? There are other cities as well in the north where house prices are higher in cities. Cities give people options and opportunities. The jobs are in cities. I'm just having a look at the Q&A. Places closer to major cities, right? The north-south divide, right, exactly. So people want to go into cities and they want to primarily go into London in the UK, right? So this is where the jobs are, this is where the high incomes are. But like in every bigger city, there is just a limited supply of housing, but many more people wanting to live in the city, right? And this is how house prices increase. It's the interplay between supply and demand. So people are able to bid higher and higher and higher, and then this is why rents increase, and this is why house prices increase. It's just the economic activity in those areas that influences prices. Okay, so this is within a country, if we just look at it at a very, very high level scale, but also we can look at house prices within cities, for example. So this is from a Rightmove advertisement that I found, I think 1.5 years ago. So this house is not on the market anymore, but yeah, this is, a typical 3-bedroom terraced house in Cambridge. It's not far from the city center. It's also very close to the train station, so in a pretty good area, right? Pretty convenient. Now this house, when you go to the advertisement and look at the pictures within the house, this is what you'll find. This is one of the rooms. Not great, right? So all the black spots, yes, that is mold. Everything that's black is mold. This is what the bathroom looks like. It's also very moldy. This is very bad, right? So this is a house that's not in great shape. But I'm not sure if you can see this. So this black pin here is where the house is. This is the city center of Cambridge. This is the train station. So you can see, it's very conveniently located to go into the city, but also to go to the train station in case you live in London, for example. Down here we have Homerton, by the way. This is Homerton. Very nice area. But yeah, what I want to show you is this is a not very great house in a really great area, right? So what do you think how much this house cost? So this was on the market. By the way, it was mentioned in the advertisement that you can't buy this with a mortgage. You have to be a cash buyer because a bank would probably not lend for this, right? This is it's too run down to be a good collateral for the bank. Okay, so this was for sale. It was not for rent. 900,000. Okay, 100,000. 550,000. So I haven't looked up the current average prices in Cambridge, but I've seen 3-bedroom houses for sale that cost between 5 and 600,000 pounds. So just to give you something to anchor your answer to. Okay, I've seen many things here. What this house cost was 375,000. So some of you were pretty close, right? And I mean, the average, a normal, good quality 3-bedroom house costs around 500,000. But how can you justify paying only 120,000 pounds less for this type of house that you will have to renovate completely, right? So this is a house that you probably will have to gut from everything that's inside, and to clean it up because of all the damp and find the reasons for the damp as well. So the reason why this house was relatively expensive, you would think that a house like that shouldn't cost that much, right? But this house is in a very good location. Some people say in the chat, is the location is a selling point. Exactly. So you might think that if this same house was in a different place, it would cost considerably less, right? So if this house was not in Cambridge, but somewhere in the county, somewhere else, 20 kilometers away from Cambridge, it should be less expensive, right? So location is the most important price driver for housing. And it doesn't matter almost what the house looks like from inside, right? So this house, I think, was bought by a letting agency. They will clean it up, they will renovate it, and then they will probably, this is currently 3 bedrooms. They will probably rent this house out for, I don't know, 2 or 3,000 pounds per month. So it's really the location that is the determining factor. But there are other factors that determine prices, right? But location is the most important one. So also when you look at, let's say, the neighborhood level, there are also things, that are not super local. So of course, what drives prices is the size of the house, right? So the characteristics of the house, how much square footage, how many bedrooms, does it have a nice sized garden? Then do you have good schools in the neighborhood, right? So this is not hyper local, but you might have a school which is not far away, which also determines house prices. Now, what I showed you here is London and what is south of London. And so we've already noticed that London is very expensive, right? So there's a lot of red here. There's a bit of green. But there's also a tiny, tiny pocket of light blue. I'm not sure if you can see that. That's down here. Any idea what this might be? Why? And blue is very, very cheap. Cheaper than green and cheaper than red for certain. What is the reason for this blue pocket down here? Gatwick Airport, right? Yep. Someone says area of high crime. I don't know that. That could be. But it's Gatwick Airport. You can almost tell how the planes fly out and in, right? So this is Gatwick. And Gatwick is not exactly next to the house, but it's very close. So this is an article that's now more than 22 years old. I got the screenshot last year. So this is a very old article from The Guardian. But there is this one house that had a 20% discount compared to what it would have sold for if it hadn't been near Gatwick, right? So the question is always comparing this house near Gatwick to an essentially identical house that's not near Gatwick. So the only difference between the two is really the location, right? And this means that Gatwick, the noise and the pollution is really the reason for this price discount. So if you want to buy cheap housing, then this is the area for you. So yeah, I mean, there are other things that are not very, very local that determine house prices. Now, there's a word for these influencing factors, right? So there might be positive factors affecting your price, and there might be negatives affecting your price, and they are called externalities or external factors. You might have heard about this, or you might learn this in paper 1, but essentially these are either benefits enjoyed, so positive externalities, or costs incurred, negative externalities, by a third party as a result of, for example, an economic transaction. So in a sense, not in a sense, but what this means is that someone else creates that externality and you as the homeowner will feel the consequences in the house price. So if you live in a neighborhood where everyone really maintains their houses really well, right? And from the outside, you walk through the street, you see all these beautiful houses and it's all clean and there are roses growing up, the doors. If you think that this is a very nice area, then probably this will have an impact on house prices. Whereas if there's a lot of crime in the area, let's say, then this will have a negative impact on your house price. And you are not the one committing the crime, right? Someone else is. So this is an externality. Someone else creates this factor, which could be positive or negative for your house price. And so you can see how Gatwick and other things in your neighborhood affect your house price. Now, what about metro stations in your neighborhood? Let's assume you live in a neighborhood where there is no metro station and then one is built. Do you think this will increase your house price or decrease your house price? Or does it depend? Hmm. And do you think that house prices will already react when the announcement is made, or only when the metro station is there, when it's built? So one thing that I haven't said is that not only do things that are already in place affect house prices, but also things that you can expect, so expectations. If someone says, if one of your counselors says, we're going to build a metro station in your area, then house prices typically react pretty fast. You don't have to wait until the metro station is there. Prices already adjust to some extent once the announcement is made. And some of you in the chat say that house prices will increase because of transport links. That's correct. Yeah. Especially if you work in a different city from where you live, right? Then if you have a subway station close to you, all of a sudden that will increase your house price. I'm not sure if someone has said that there might be negative effects as well. So this is something that we commonly see, namely, especially during construction phase, right? Construction is loud, it's noisy, it's dirty, there's pollution, there's a lot of dust. So it's not surprising that when you start construction of a new subway, house prices will first decrease because it's a disamenity to have all the construction in your area. But once the metro station is there, house prices recover. All right. I think I have far too many slides for this taster session. I'm going to just, well, I think we have a few minutes to go through the remaining slides, but I'll not do all of them probably, and not in the great detail that I wanted to do. So I'll briefly switch and close this presentation and open the one that I have on my tablet because I want to sketch a few things. Let me quickly find this. So. It will only take about 5 seconds. There we are. Good. So I want to show you the very basics of mathematically and statistically modeling the relationship between price determinants and prices. So let's start with a very simple hedonic model of house prices. Hedonic models are essentially models of house prices. So it's a function, let's call it H. H is for house prices. And let's say house prices are made up of different price effects, right? Like we just discussed, number of bedrooms, square footage, location, whether this house was recently renovated, EPC rating, etc. So that's a hedonic model. It describes house prices as a function of its influencing factors. And here I'm looking at a very simple one, namely one that only depends on one factor, and that factor is B. Let's say B is the number of bedrooms. So what this function tells us is, if we have a certain number of bedrooms, what should the house cost, right? So if we have more bedrooms, then the house should probably cost more. And we assume that nothing else matters. So that here in this model, we just assume that the number of bedrooms is the only factor that influences house prices. Now what we can see here is a function of that. So this function tells us when we plug in different values for the number of bedrooms, we will get different results, right? So if we have one bedroom, then our house price will be 50,000 plus 10,000 times 1, and that's 60,000. If we have two bedrooms, then we sub in b equal to 2. Then we have 50,000 plus 20,000, and that is then 70,000. And so we can go on and on and on, right? Now, there is one case here which looks a bit counterintuitive. If we have 0 bedrooms, then the house still has a price, right? With 0 bedrooms, we have a price of 50,000. Now that's, that's an extreme case. Let's just ignore it. But we could go on and on and on and plug in different values for B, and that would give us different values for H. Now, if we plot this, then we could put the number of bedrooms on the x-axis and the resulting house price on the y-axis. So for 0 bedrooms, we'd get 50,000. I'll just abbreviate this. For 1 bedroom, that's 0. For 1 bedroom, we get 60,000. And for 2 bedrooms, we get 70,000. And so on, right? So this would give us a straight line. Yeah, let's say this is straight. And we could read off from this line how much a house should cost if we have different numbers of bedrooms. So that's a very simple hedonic model if we just consider that bedrooms are the only price determinant. So, but of course that's not true, right? So this is a made up data set, but we have here, I'll just zoom in, we have here in the rows different houses. So there's one house that costs £190,000, has 4 bedrooms, is in a certain area, let's assume these are postcode areas. Distance is the distance to the CBD, to the central business district or to the city center. We have bathrooms, stories, whether it's on a main road, etc. So normally we have lots of influencing factors, right? And we would have much more complex models. But we can also simplify this to show some basic ideas. Now, if we look at the relationship between house price and distance to the city center, what is it that you typically observe? Typically, that means when the distance is small, which means you're very close to the city center, house prices are higher per square meter, right? And when distance is higher, house prices are lower. So that means we should have, if we look at that and we would put distance down here and house prices down here, we would have a relationship that looks like that, right? Higher distance to the city center means lower house prices, and lower distance to the city center means higher house prices. So that is an average representation probably of what we've seen in the case of Gatwick and the other graphs that I've shown you. And then what you can do is you take your data, so actual empirical evidence, where you have, like the table that I showed you with the different cases with different houses, you can plot all of these combinations of distance to the city center and house prices in a graph. And this is the graph, the resulting graph. So what this means is, let's just have a look at 1 or 2 cases. Let's say this point up here means this is a house which is around 8 kilometers away from the city center, a little less, and costs a little less than £180,000. Down here, we have a house that is much further away from the city center and is therefore also much cheaper, right? So we have now this big, big cloud of data, and we want to find a good description of what this relationship shows. And this relationship could be depicted or summarized or simplified by a straight line. Now, what would be a good straight line that represents data well? This is not a good representation, right? Most of the points are not on the line. This is not a good representation. This is not a good representation. But, something like this represents the cloud of data relatively well. You can see there is, well, a downward trend this direction, right? So this is a good representation. Now, what this means is that this line, this orange line, is for average prices, right? Not every point lies on the graph. Some of them do. But for example, this point up here, according to this representation, a house with 8 bedrooms should cost on average £100,000. But this specific one costs much more, right? So what could the relationship, sorry, this is not bedrooms, this is kilometers, right? Kilometers from the city center. Why could this specific house be so much more expensive than the average of houses that are 8 kilometers away? Well, it could be that this is a very big house, right? It has 10 bedrooms. It's very close to the city center, only 8 kilometers away. Well, it's not very close, but it could be an extremely big house. Perhaps the neighborhood is extremely good, right? It's maybe far away from the city center, but the neighborhood that it's in might be very, very good. So I have more slides, but I really want to give you the chance to ask questions. And this is why I'm going to stop this presentation.
Yes, I think this is a good time to start the Q&A. And we have a current student with us who's also a land economy student who joined us. And I'll start providing the questions, and please feel free, both of you, to respond. I think the first question was in general for applicants who's obviously are not applying to land economy in other universities. To what extent is having a UCAS personal statement that doesn't address specifically land economy, all the 3 areas of land economy, affecting? I think I just want to throw one caveat. Yeah, for this is not only land economy specific, but a lot of other subjects are very interdisciplinary, HSPS, other subjects. So what ends up happening is you have the UCAS application, and then you have the My Cambridge application. And the My Cambridge application provides space for an additional statement, and it is very usual for very specific subjects to have the personal statement being very broad or only about one part of the course, and the My Cambridge statement being a very specific, widest subject. But please feel free to weigh in.
I agree. I mean, there's like you said, the MyCap, the field where you can enter, where you can describe at least in a few sentences why you want to study land economy. But very often, I mean, if you're interested in land economy, then and you are interested in economics, like a plain vanilla economics degree, no one keeps you from writing about land economy things in your economics personal statement, right? So if you're interested in land economy, because you're interested in house prices or housing markets, then this might be a good thing to mention in your econ personal statement as well, right? Because that's part of economics as well. So there are things that you can use in both statements, but I would definitely use the MyCap field where you can enter additional information. Also, there are other things, like I said, we don't only look at the personal statement, we look at the subjects you've taken. We look at your school reference. So there probably is a lot of evidence that you're interested in land economy. Make use of the options that we have.
The next question is about what are you looking for with regards to written work? What qualities do you look for in written work?
In written work, I think the typical qualities that any teacher would look for. You need to be able to make logical arguments. There should be a flow. You should, there should be a good structure. So it's not really, it doesn't matter what the written work is on. It really doesn't matter. We want to see that you can tackle a question and answer it with, a certain method, and that it's written well. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, anything really that would be considered a good essay in your school is, that has the qualities that we want to see.
Yes, and a different question. Question is for colleges that do not require written work. How do you decide who to invite for an interview? And I think this was already mentioned. Is colleges have a variety of factors they look into. If there isn't written work or if there isn't an assessment, then the other factors still exist. So if you apply to a college that doesn't have written work, then this means that they're gonna not have that as a factor, but look at other things. And I think a good number of our social sciences and humanities subjects have written work because typically bosses would want to see how people formulate arguments, want to see how they perform in essay-based subjects, and how they reason, at least in written form. And yes. And what is widening participation like at Homerton for contextual factors affecting a student's? So essentially, how do we assess contextual factors? Um, I think this is true for most colleges, not only Homerton. That the whether it's admission tutors or directors of studies, they have a lot of information on the student, not only their individual grades, but also the average grade in their school, um, the usual performance in GCSE and A levels, if they can get certain subjects or not. Information also provided by the UCAS 3. So there is a lot of factors that help contextualize someone's performance. And this is true for, I think, all colleges and all subjects. How much math and programming do you learn in the course? I think that's a
I can do
question.
that. I happen to teach maths in first year, so I can tell you exactly how much. If you have A levels in maths, you'll know most of the things that we teach in maths. If you have not done A levels, then you just have some more work to do. For those of you who have A levels in maths or further maths, we do differentiation and applications of differentiation, such as maximization, minimization. Something that you probably haven't seen, even if you have A levels, is constraint optimization. So, for some of you, this might be word clouds because you haven't heard this before. But for those of you who did maths, we do optimization. And we not only have the actual paper 3 with the exam, but we also have kind of a bridge course, a refresher course, which precedes the actual maths part of paper 3. So in Michaelmas, so in the first, in the term starting in October, there are 4 weeks in which I show you what type of methods you'll be studying in the actual paper. And then you have 3, 4, 5 months to prepare for that. In terms of programming, that really depends on what papers you choose in year 2 and 3. I think in year 1, where you do not only maths, but also statistics, you'll be able to use statistical software. But then in year 2 and 3, it really depends what type of papers you pick. So because some papers are purely essay-based and there's no point in using any programming, right? But for example, in finance or in real estate finance, you are able to use different programs. And then if you decide to do a quantitative dissertation in year 3, so one that requires, where you have big data sets, then you will learn some of the methods yourself. It's just part of independent studies, and your supervisor will tell you what type of methods you can use, right? So it's mostly up to you, really, how much programming you do. That's the answer to the question.
And Samuel, would you like to add based on your personal experience?
Yeah, the question was about maths, right? Like how
Math
much?
and programming, yes.
Yeah, programming is not that applicable in first year. There's, as Carlo was talking about, there is a bit of Excel and stuff, but you have the choice, and it's not that heavy in first year. And with the maths in first year as well, like pure maths, if you didn't take A level, it's not that bad. Nothing that you actually do in first year is like ungraspable. Everything you do, it looks a bit daunting initially, but like with a bit of time, and if you look at it properly, if you look at YouTube videos from A levels and textbooks, everything is actually graspable. I didn't take A-level maths and I was okay. So yeah, it's not the end of the world. And the maths, like compared to pure economics, the stuff they're doing is crazy. So yeah, it's not that bad in the end. That's my takeaway. It's all graspable. You can learn it all. It's all learnable. Like nothing is it looks difficult, but it's not impossible to learn. Like you can learn on YouTube. There's a bit of time. It will take a bit longer, but it's not that bad.
That's good to know. And the next question is about things you look regarding personal statements. What is a good personal statement for you?
Oh, that's always difficult. I think one that shows, and I think I've said that, one that really shows why you are interested in what you're studying, what you're applying for, right? And like I said, I mean, you might have a different personal statement that is tailored to a different subject, but you can still make it interesting, right? So we really want to see why you think you are a good candidate for the subject and what type of bigger problems you want to address in the world. And also what past experiences you have that help you to be a good land economist. But it's so variable, really. I don't think I have a one size fits all answer for this.
Fair enough.
Can I interject?
Really? Mhm. Yes,
Um,
someone?
I think an important thing, I don't really assess the statements because I'm not a tutor, but I think an important thing is that it has to link. So I got told in my when I was doing my statement that shouldn't be a story, but I feel like writing in a journey, like steps, like from start from beginning to end is important. That's what I did. Um yeah, so it kind of made sense when you're reading it. It's kind of satisfying. Like a lot of people I feel like they try too many things all in the same statement, so it's kind of hard to read. It's not really smooth and coherent. So I feel like if you just like try and make it make sense and explain it as a journey, it helps a lot with the reader because it has to be enjoyable to read for the person to want to interview you and interesting as well. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's good to know. And regarding how you assess regarding for inviting people to interview, how do you assess GCSEs and do you differentiate between eights and nines?
Um, So I don't think we pay particular attention to GCSEs. I mean, I don't care if it was an 8 or a 9, let's put it that way. It is evidence of subjects that you've taken. And if you did
Mm,
well on that, that's fantastic. But I think we really focus more on A levels than other things.
yeah, I think that's applicable to a good number of subjects as well. Unless the subject explicitly tells you we care about GCSEs, I think it's default that they're not that important. Um, how long does it take before you can choose to specialize in a particular area in land economy? So I think this was covered discussing year one, having the basic papers, and then year two specializing. So I think that was already covered. The next question is about written work, and can you take an excerpt? Yes, you can take an excerpt from your EPQ for your written work. It is also mentioned on the page. Just make sure it doesn't exceed the word limit that's mentioned on that page as well. So ideally, if it's between 1,000 and 1,500 and no more than 2,500, please. And do the papers that you select in the second year affect the papers? Because yes, this was mentioned again. Certain papers in third year you can only take if you took, for example, the one that was mentioned was paper 6 that unlocks future papers in third year. And sorry, I'm just going through these because they've been popping more and more. Any advice for applying? Okay. Applicants who are post qualifications, for example, who did gap years.
Oh yeah,
Um,
let's give Samuel the chance because he did a gap year.
Okay, actually the question? What's the question? Like,
any
I,
advice? Yeah, any advice for applying to
right.
land economy on a gap year?
Oh, like you got the offer and you deferred it, or you're just applying on a gap year? Because in my case,
Um,
I often deferred it. So I think
oh,
the advice is still applicable. What I was gonna say is maybe keep your brain running because I feel like a big issue I faced was when I came to uni after the gap year. I hadn't forgotten everything; it was still there, but it took me a long time for my brain to start like cycling again. So like I feel like the concepts I was learning weren't even difficult. It's just because I was out of the game for so long, I just forgot key concepts. So I feel like if you're taking a gap year and going straight studying, maybe watch a couple like if you did econ, I'd say watch a bit of econ plus style videos, a couple, not too many, just a little bit. If you did maths as well, brush up on the maths a little bit. Look at the pre-reading as well before you come. It's not the advice is not like groundbreaking, just like keep your brain active. First couple months in your gap year, it doesn't really matter as much because like it's a holiday, you're supposed to relax. When it comes to like we start in October, so when it comes to like September, middle of September, end of September, start refreshing your brain again, because you don't want to be competing with people that are just coming out straight out of year 13 who are fresh. You want to like rejig your memory a little bit. So that's what I recommend. Just keep going a little bit. Don't go in like prepared completely.
Although I think that's very true. Although I think for this specific question, it was more about people who are applying on a gap year, so post qualifications applicants,
No.
and if
It's so interesting, yeah. I think we don't look for different things really. We don't. Just tell us what you did, how you can use that to study land economy, and you know all the other things. But we don't dislike gap year students really at all. So
yeah.
apply.
I think that's true for all courses. At least for Homerton, here, preface this. At least for Homerton, we don't differentiate significantly between um, students who are applying in their 12th or 13th year and people who are post qualifications. I know this is sometimes different depending on the other colleges, so I can speak for those. And this brings me to another question, which colleges are more lenient in terms of grades? I don't think there's a clear answers towards that. I think the thing that I can mention is that if you look at course subject pages on the Central University website, you will notice that certain colleges have additional requirements for certain subjects. For example, if it's like design, for example, for us, we require A star in math. That's an example of something we specify for a subject. And certain colleges do certain requirements for specific subjects. So that's as much as I can answer that question. Um, should you take into account directors of studies when applying for colleges? I don't, I'm not because the courses will remain the same. And I think director of studies, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more of a guidance and pastoral role. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you are interested in development economics, you need to go to a college that has a development economics director of studies. So I think that's a no. Um, how can I adapt my law-oriented personal statements for land economy? If someone has a land economy personal statement, no, a law specific personal statement, would that be okay? Yes or no? I'm assuming it's a yes. And
That's me.
oh, that's you.
No, is it to me? Because I didn't have a law statement. I had an econ statement. My statement was econ, but it was quite open though, because I applied for economics at Manchester and Leeds, pure economics, and I applied for data science at UCL, applied for land economy at Cambridge. So like my statement wasn't like purely econ. So I don't think so, because I think Cambridge like acknowledges that land economy is not really like a course everywhere, so they know that statements they're gonna get are not land economy specific, you know.
Yeah, I think this was mentioned before you came, and I think I like that you said, despite not being here, you said exactly the same thing that was mentioned before. So
Yeah.
this just shows that it's more true that we don't expect magically for your personal statement to hit all three aspects of the subject. Couple of questions touch on how mathematical the course is, and if your first application talks about econometrics, regression, will that affect will that seem like not a good fit for being in land economy? And although it was kind of mentioned by Samuel that his application was more economy oriented.
Chaz, what was the back end of the question? I didn't catch the last.
Yeah. So if this was more a question to Caroline,
Oh, okay.
If you see an application that talks purely perhaps about econometrics, regression, very mathematical aspects of land economy, would that be negative?
No, it's not negative at all. I mean, if especially if the regression or the quantitative things that you're mentioning relates to land economy, or to any other, and land economy is very, very broad. Economics is part of land economy. So if you have a regression output in that you describe in your personal statement, and you describe that well, then you take one of the boxes. Econ is one of the pillars of land economy. So that's not detrimental at all.
And the next question is, after a graduation, what support does the college and department offer in terms of employment opportunity, like employment opportunities in industrial places? And I feel like I want to first start with Samuel's experience regarding career services and career days in Cambridge, and how, as a land economy, you felt, to what extent was it useful and helpful?
Okay, well, I don't know how to answer the part about like post-education, the graduation part, 'cause I'm just finished first year. But in terms of currently at uni, I'd say it's quite helpful. We get like quite a lot of emails from somebody called Sam as well, and he sends a lot of emails about career opportunities, and they're quite applicable to what we do. A lot of people actually take these emails, like they take them and they actually apply to this kind of thing, and they actually get the internship. So there's quite a lot of career support from the course, and the degree is very like broad. You can go into a lot of different things. So a lot of my friends are going into law, they're going into investment banking, they're going to different sectors. So it's really applicable. And yeah, the emails you get come from like they send a lot of they send a lot of variety in the email. So we get stuff about real estate, we get internship opportunities about investment stuff, asset management. It's a variety. So yeah.
I think he froze for a bit.
Yeah, and not much to add. I mean, we have an alumni association that runs events as well, where students are invited for an evening to join one of their events. We have career fairs, etc. I have not included one of the slides that I had in a previous presentation, but everyone who graduates and doesn't want to take a planned break or doesn't want to study for an MPhil, everyone has a job. And the job options are really, it's a very wide array of sectors and jobs. And we have contacts with many different people. And like Sam said, you'll get many emails inviting you to certain things and to apply for internships.
Yeah. And just a quick question here about the Mac-Average application statement. Should it be written in the same way as a personal statement? And you
It's
can.
shorter. It's
Yeah.
shorter, I think. So you won't be able to write a full-length statement, but just give us some facts. I mean, make the best use of the word count that.
Yes. I think I've read dozens in different subjects, and most of them is like very direct to the point. I like X because XYZ,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's it.
Like
There
land
was
economy
no,
because yeah.
yeah,
No, I agree. I mean, you just have, I think, 1,500 words, if at all. So
yeah,
just put what you like and why. Don't
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
need to yeah.
yes. It
Don't
wasn't
overthink.
very, yes, it wasn't very. It was mainly content. It wasn't about the way you wrote it, and I think that makes it even more useful. Would someone with a triple A star predicted look better than someone predicted A star AA?
Like I said, grades are only one factor in our decisions. Does it look good? It does, right? But you have to achieve the grade as well. I mean, you have to at least achieve one A star AA, right? I think we consider at least 6, 7, 8 different things, and the grades are just one of them. The minimum requirement is fine, and then you can still exceed those grades if you like.
The next question is about, can you switch to econ in year 2? And I'm not sure if perhaps this person is referring to switching to the economics course, which I think the answer to that is would be difficult given that you didn't take the year 1 papers for econ. And I think there is only like a few limited number of subjects where you can intercalate, like take a bit of multiple subjects or like both or switch. It's very, I don't think land economy to econ is one of them, unless I'm wrong. And, yeah.
So I think it is possible, but it's difficult probably. It goes back to one of the other questions about the maths content in econ versus land economy. We do much less maths in land economy, and economics is very maths focused. So I would think it's possible, but it's both directors of studies of both programs will have to agree as well. And typically, sometimes there will be some kind of assessment as well, whether it's possible or not. But I would say the answer is it is possible, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But it depends.
With the new personal statement format, what questions would you recommend to focus more on? So I think they're splitting the personal statements into 3 or 4 sub-questions. I saw that on a training a couple of weeks ago. So I feel like I'm not sure it would change the reasoning that was given to us. It's not going to change much of the content. You just, instead of having 4 or 5 paragraphs, you're just going to divide that up toward different questions. And the point of the new format was to kind of make it clearer what the content or the flow should be. And I don't think, as we mentioned, personal statements is not going to automatically mean if you have a bad or if you think your personal statement is weak, that doesn't it's not gonna solely determine your application. So I don't think you should worry only about like personal statements. It's not something to worry about or the new format of it. And how can we? The final question: how can we stand out in an interview? Do we need to have really impressive knowledge, or just how we adapt to the interviewer?
I would say it's rather the latter than the first. We might have questions that you have never thought about, right? So you might be lucky and we ask something that you studied, but it might be something very different. And like I said in my slides, what we really look for is how you approach these questions and how you reason through your answers. So it's really a conversation, right? And conversation means you may ask clarification questions as well. So if you ask good questions, we can give you certain pieces of information that might help you with your answer. So the questions are set in such a way that you can answer them, even if you haven't studied that specific question. But it should be challenging, right? We want to challenge you. We want to see how you reason through your answers. We want to see how you adapt to certain pieces of information that we may release to you. But yeah, I mean, Samuel, do you remember your interview?
I've got a question. Is this call, you know, the people on this call, they applying to Homerton, are like, is it off holders or like who's on the people are
Yeah,
taking?
primarily, I would say, yeah, probably.
Okay, so these are off holders for Homerton, or like are the people applying for?
Oh, they're just going to apply. They're going to apply.
Oh, they're going to apply, and they don't know
Yeah.
what college they're going to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I applied for Jesus, but I've got all my friends because I go Homerton now. I got pulled, so all my friends go to Homerton, and like we had really different interview experiences. So my experience for Jesus was a bit confusing because like when you look on YouTube for like what Cambridge interview is going to be like, you kind of get a consensus. It's going to be like curveball questions. So I was really preparing for the questions Caroline's talking about, like the really open-ended questions about just really ambiguous things, about like stuff you can't really answer. So I was thinking that I was gonna have to like walk through my process and stuff and like that kind of thing. But in my interview, I got asked like not basic, but questions not like that. So I got asked like, what did I learn recently in class? Just not the questions I was expecting. So I was a bit thrown off a little bit. But when I speak to my friends that went to Homerton, who got in, who are in my year as well, they told me they got asked a couple of questions. I'm not sure exactly what they got asked, but they got the kind of questions that like when you search on YouTube, like how to prepare for a Cambridge interview, they got them kind of questions. So yeah, my interview, I feel like my interview experience wasn't very representative because um like when I asked people how the interview went and the kind of questions they got, mine was just completely different. So I'm not sure really what happened with my interview, but yeah, I would say like the couple of questions like they are true. So like be prepared to like get asked something that you don't expect. Even medicine students, I know some med students they get asked questions about geography and stuff. People here they get asked questions about Mars, just about things you can't really answer. They just want to. I just know that they want to hear your thought process and how you
Yeah,
what you derive from the question. They just want you to try stuff out and be creative. And then they give you prompts and stuff. So it's not like you're not supposed to really. They want you to get the right answer, but like they don't want you to come to it straight away. They want you to explain like how you got there, and so like show you working out in real life, so they can tell you where you went wrong, where you slipped up, and then you can adapt your answer and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I understood from the interview.
I think that is pretty representative of the last part, not the first part. But yes, there are certain subjects that have one of the interviews being more of like a personal motivation, personal interest. But usually there would be at least one of the 2 interviews being more about the subject. And I audited a couple in different subjects, and the main common thread was that uh, you weren't expected to actually know that specific concept or that specific case study or that specific. It was something that was tangentially like in your background, but they gave you enough clues to, if you had the right intuition and the right reasoning, you would be able to piece up the puzzle and be able to answer. And so this is true whether it was for geopolitics or for chemistry. Most of the, at least after the first two questions, the content wasn't something you would have studied directly. It would be something that is beyond the scope, but that was the point, was seeing how you would react to new information and new enhance and all that. So unless there's anything to add, I feel like this was a good note to end on. I know we ran a bit over time, but thank you everyone for still being here. And any last words?
Good
All
luck.
good?
With the application.
Yeah. So yes, we look forward. Yeah. So thank you both for joining us here, and thank